Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're back. New year, same old Spurs. If it was for the very first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. Like I say, if you can for us, like, hype, subscribe to the show. That would be greatly appreciated. We're joined by three great returning guests. Broadcaster Russ Williams is back. Marlon's back from Spurs Kings TV. And Luke is back from Spotlight on Spurs for the latest episode of Tottenham. Tottenham in 2026. As much change from 2025? Not really. Look, like I mentioned, same old Tottenham to some degree, you have to say. And look, there were big boos once again for Thomas Frank at full time as Spurs failed to win at home again. It would be remiss of me not to say that it was a good first half from Tottenham, where Ben Davies' goal on the half an hour mark gave Tottenham the perfect platform to build upon what could have been a really good home performance. But Thomas Frank, for whatever particular reason, whether you want to blame it on the players or his tactics, went defensive in the second half, invited pressure, and Sunderland got themselves, in my opinion, a deserved equaliser. It means for Thomas Frank, 2 Premier League wins in his last 11. We haven't scored a goal in open play, which I'm led to believe now is 6.5 matches. And since Xavi scored against Brentford, it's almost 10 hours, that is, against Slavia, Forest, Liverpool, Palace, Brentford and Sunderland respectively. We've not scored from open play. Shout out to Michael Johnny Blaine from that stat out there. But a reminder, this was a Sunderland side that were missing 6 players due to their participation in the African Nations Cup. And I think, again, whilst we've seen an improvement definitely in the first half, the second half is a big concern as to why Tottenham can't, for whatever reason, put together 2 solid halves of football. In terms of the match facts and stats from the game, Tottenham 13 shots to Sunderland's 10. Tottenham 5 shots on target to Sunderland's 3. Tottenham shots inside the box 10 to Sunderland's 9. And many are picking up on the fact we're not having many shots outside the box. One of the key things that we did hear from Thomas Frank, he doesn't really like players taking opportunities from outside the box. Tottenham 33 touches in the Sunderland box compared to the 19. Sunderland edging the tackles 17 to 15. Tottenham edging the clearances 32 to 26. Sunderland also edging the corner count 5 to 3. Sunderland also edging the possession 51% to 49%. Tottenham at least managed an XG over 1.30 to 0.52. In terms of what it means for the league table, Tottenham start the 2026 fixtures in 13th. And given the nature of just the Premier League right now, Tottenham still only 4 points away from the current top 5, despite taking just 27 points from their opening 20 Premier League games. Crazy league, crazy table. We won't talk about who's top of it because that will give fans even more concerns, definitely. Luke, we're going to open with you on this last one on Spurs because it felt, for the large degrees of that game, Tottenham, to be fair, did have, it felt, 3 points in their hands. We scored from our 9th corner of the season. That's becoming a familiar theme. But this is where, again, I've mentioned this in the intro, pragmatism has been the undoing of Tottenham. And I think many will want to know, why did Thomas Frank sit back to play on the break when we were so dominant in the first half? And we're just showing listeners that are watching the show live the difference in statistics from the first half to the second half and how dominative Tottenham were in the first half compared to the second. We were entirely too content to try and win 1-0. Is them actually looking to put together a complete performance? Luke, thoughts on the overall game for you?
Yeah, it was unbelievable, the difference in the first and the second halves. They were unbelievable, just how different they were. From the first minute, Tell had a shot in, I think it was within 90 seconds, albeit quite basic one for the keeper, but it just set the precedent straight away to say, right, we're going to go and attack, we're going to go and try and score, and we're going to push forward. I think the pressing was really good in the first half, and listen, a lot of it from the second half might have been down to players being tired. It might have been that sort of thing. But I just felt like soon as we come out, we just there was a different feeling of how we wanted to play in that second half. The first half, 100%. I'm not pretending it was the most amazing performance I've ever seen, but it was what we hadn't seen for most of this year. As I said, intent is the word I always use under Frank. they just come out and they look like they wanted to attack. I think Tell, every time he gets the ball, he's either trying to beat his man, get a cross in, or have a shot. That's all. They're the three things that he wants to do all the time. And obviously there have been some issues there, but he's barely played. And then he starts tiring in the second half, which for me, I mean, it was only 4 or 5 days ago when Brennan Johnson was already confirmed as leaving the club, and he's the one that comes off the bench and Tell's sitting there. What makes no sense. So some of the reasons why some of the players were tired was not just down to them not playing. There's weird decisions around what's been happening at the club, as there always seems to be with Tottenham. But the first half, I was impressed. If that was the benchmark for what's going to happen game on game, then absolutely I can get on board with that. And we've been on here so many times saying we can't see a philosophy, we can't see a style of play, we can't see what they want to do, or we could in that first half. And then in typical Spurs fashion, we follow it up with what we've been doing all year. And the second half was just so bad. From all of the positives that we had in that first, we had probably more negatives in that second, in my eyes. So, but there were some little bits that we can take going forward. And again, hopefully this should be right in front of Frank now to say, if I go around it one way, the first half, we were dominant, we were winning. And the second half, when we reverted back to type, we wasn't in the game at all. We was completely out of it. So hopefully this is him looking back now and going, the first half is the way forward.
Russ, let's bring you in. And I agree with your assessment there, Luke. You know, Sunderland's equaliser felt like it was coming after the substitution. Spurs seemed to seep further back and retreated. The introduction of Berg Van Pleen seemed to stifle our creativity. Then you have the Kudus injury 2 days after the Johnson sale. You just couldn't really make up things around Tottenham at the moment. We'll come on to where we are in the window a bit later on. But Russ, overall thoughts on that display at home against Sunderland for you?
Well, I mean, I think Luke was extremely fair. I think a lot of people would say that the first half was better, but let's have it right. That's the bare minimum we expect from our club at home. And the fact that they've managed to do it for 45 minutes seems to me a bit ridiculous. We're all going, oh, well, they're really good, you know, this, that, and the other. That's what they should be doing every bloody game, really. So, but the drop-off in the second half, heads dropped, Sunderland dominated everything. We knew that they were going to score. The goal that they scored, incidentally, was exactly the sort of goal up front that we're incapable of scoring, because we don't have a big determined striker anywhere at the club, injured or no, in my opinion. And I just think that it is too easy to blame Thomas Frank for the ills of what is, and I hate to say this, a declining football club. That is what we are at the moment. We are declining. And the legacy in reality is it's the transfer stuff that we all know about. It's the quality of the players. And, you know, I'm not Thomas Frank out yet, and I'll tell you the reason why. When he was at Brentford, he had 3 players who, frankly, would walk into our team now and play week in and week out. Johan Wissa, Brian Mbeumo, and Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney, who I remember seeing making his debut against Wycombe Wanderers at the G-Tech for Brentford, and he was absolutely terrible. They paid 5 million for him, and he turned down Spurs to go to Brentford and had a tremendous career. But he knew he had goals there. He does not know that he's got goals with the players that we have right now playing for us. The front 4, you can't expect them to gel. They just don't look right. There is a question mark over Kolo Muani for me. I thought Pedro Porro was pretty dreadful today. Some of the defending was awful. I'll stick up for Richarlison, by the way. And I think that he led the line as best he could, but he's not a top quality player. Sorry to say it. You know, people might think, oh, bloody hell, you're negative. I'm not negative. I'm just telling you what I see. And when I talk to Spurs fans, we all agree that we're nowhere near good enough. But look at the way we've won the Europa League. Brilliant. By hook or by crook, somehow we did it, right? And We cannot take that away from the history books, and it's something to celebrate. But in the Premier League and in the Cups, we are a declining football club at the moment. Is Thomas Frank the man to stop the decline? Until he gets decent players in nearly every position, I don't think that we can really make a judgment. But at Brentford, he managed to get the results that he got because of those players and, of course, other players at Brentford. Good attacking players with a lot of skill. Why were our people not looking at buying those players? You know, I couldn't believe that. And Wemo actually just went, I don't want to go to Spurs, I'm going to Man United. I couldn't believe it. You know, why weren't we in for Cunha? Seriously, making overtures for players like that? To me, it's just mismanagement on a massive level. And I'm not talking about Thomas Frank. It's way, way higher than that. And it's a reality check for all of us. And I absolutely hate having no passion watching our football club. But I just look at them and I just think, you know, the first half, I thought, yes, it is better. I like to see them press. Wow, we haven't done that for a while. But it's the bare minimum that we should be doing. And we got what we deserved today. You know, and I'm still sticking with Thomas Frank, as mad as that may seem to other people. But of course, I don't make the decisions. Other people may think, well, I'm sorry, Thomas, you've had your chance and we're getting somebody else in.
We'll come on to Frank in a wider discussion soon. Marlon, we bring you back in. Love to see you back on the show. I feel like it's a running theme this. You know, we've scored from our 9th corner of the season to go ahead. That's where the goals are coming from right now. As I mentioned, that crazy stat, we've had 0 open play goals in the last 5 Premier League games, and it's 6.5 matches since our last goal. Crazy. I mean, look, we had no intensity to really kill off the game itself. We just seem to let teams back in the game. I mean, I will just say, Sunderland, they have had 2 defeats in their last 12, so there have been a decent side to break down. But I will repeat the fact they've had, 5-6 players missing due to their participation in the African Nations Cup. Marlon, thoughts on the game itself before we get into the wider picture?
Yeah, look, it's about margins in this Premier League, and for me, once Mawani had missed that, couldn't control it for that second goal, game over. Because the problem with Tottenham right now, and we've all said it, you know, we just can't score goals. And today, you clearly saw that. Everyone has said we did play okay in that first half. We were actually quite good. And we had chances. But when you've got, and I go back to what he said in the last game, you cannot trust this front line. They're not putting the chances away. Because we're all going to sit there. I've seen what everyone has said. We're all going to sit there and moan about those last 30 minutes. But when it came down to it, if you look at it, the chances we had, and we just couldn't put it in the back of the net. We just can't ever seem to create anything. He's getting to a point where he thought, and look at the bench he had today, there was no attacking players really on there for him to put on. So you're looking at it going, you had to bring on Kolo Muani within the first 15 minutes? So he's gone. So you're sitting there and you look at that bench, you're relying on literally Bergvall, Luke Williams, Barnett, and Scarlett. So you're literally relying on 2 youngsters to come on to change the game in a Premier League and against a team, like you just said, who are 2-12. And remind you, they might be missing players. Man City drew this team the other night as well. So I know Frank's going to get pelters, and he truly deserves some pelters, because why he tried to revert back to tight when he knows we can't really defend was just amazed me. But at the same time, when he looked at that, the players we were relying on as our attack, look, Tell hasn't played in weeks. So you're relying on a player that's been on the bench. Brendan Johnson's now gone. Another bench player that we'd have probably relied on today. Richarlison, yeah, he might run around a lot, but he's not. When he's not putting it in the back of the net, he's a bit like anybody else. So for me, at this present moment, I looked at us going forward at the moment, and at this present moment, it's letting us down. Big time, it's letting Frank down, it's letting everybody down, because if we would have gone 2-0 up, I tell you now, no one would have been surprised, because we were playing okay at home as well. It wasn't like, you know, we were playing badly and we deserve to be 1-0 up. If we openly all admit we deserve to be 1-0 up, what the worst thing we could have done, what Frank done at the time, and it's down to his management, he went, I'm not going to get that second goal. This team is not going to get that second goal. He didn't trust the attack to get that second goal. Let me protect what we've got. The problem is, if we looked at it in the bigger picture, would have gone, why are you protecting what we've got with the players you've got? Because they can't do that. You can clearly see it. And we just allowed Sunderland back in the game, and Sunderland went and put their chances away. This is what's going to happen at the moment. You have to look at it on both perspectives at the moment as we keep going forward, because if we looked at the bigger picture today, it was a lot better than the last two games. We were in the first half, we looked like we were trying to do something, and then second half, it was kind of like, it was end-to-end stuff for the first 15 minutes, and then he made the subs and it killed the game.
Lost control. Lost control, Marlon.
Lost control of it, but it was always going to happen because Sunderland didn't really come out at us until that second half. And then they looked like they were going to score, apart from when Romero, I don't know what he was doing when he made that mistake and tried to cost us. But did Sunderland really lay a glove on us until he made those subs? No, not really. But where else did he have to go? Because everyone will sit there and go, because even when Dane Scarlett and Finn came over the last 5 minutes, it's not like it turned the game all of a sudden because he put on more attacking players. At the present moment, this is what he's got. This is what he's being dealt with. And I'm looking at it going, I know I'm proper against Frank sometimes, but today I looked at him and went, at least we tried to do something in that first half, but second half, I didn't know where he could go. I looked at that bench and I went, if he makes subs today, it's going to cost him. He needs to be 1 or 2-0 up.
Marlon, why change what was working? I think that will be the big question a lot of people are asking us.
Yeah.
We were in control of the game.
But the
yes,
problem
Sunderland were better second half, but we were in control of the game. Why change what was
did he have? He had to change it because Luke said it earlier. Tell started to get, a lot of the players started to feel it. You got to remember they've played how many games in the last how many days? Okay, it's not like, and he's actually used the same starting lineup. Ben Davies started to feel it in that. You saw Ben Davies start to. He hasn't played much football. A lot of them haven't played much football over the last 3 or 4 months. So that's down to Frank not managing his squad better. But you can't expect. Who did you expect to come on for Tell today?
No, I'm not. But I mean, the question I'd ask back to you is it by design or by instruction then that these players are retreating back in that second half? What is it for you?
No. So again, it comes down to that Paulinho Bentancur situation.
Yes,
because as soon as he brings on Paulinho and Bentancur, you all knew what we were going to try and do. We were trying to protect that 1-0 lead. Because,
so you're suggesting there that he hasn't got the players available to him to change it accordingly. Yeah. But then by making that substitution automatically, we're retreating and we're dropping backwards and backwards.
Exactly, and that's because Archie Gray, he looked like he ran out of steam. What's his name? Tell started to look like he ran out of steam. And look at the players he had to bring off the bench. This is the problem you're going to have. If you don't have like for like and your squad is not big enough and it's not, you can't sit there and go revert, try and keep going back to what he was doing because you just don't have the players to do it. And that's the biggest problem right now is that he doesn't, and it's costed him. And for him, he's got to look at it and go, yes, he should have kept. He should have gone out and tried to get that second goal because it was there. It was there for us to win today, but he hasn't, and he's gone and reverted as soon as, like I said, as soon as that sub was made with Paulinho coming on, and it weren't Bentancur coming off. You knew exactly what was going to happen, and every Spurs fan in that stadium knew exactly what Sunderland were going to do after that. And they literally, Sunderland went, here we go. This is what we played for. As soon as Paulinho came on, they literally went, we're going to start attacking now because they knew that Spurs would revert back, and we just can't defend. You can clearly see we can't defend.
It's a real difficulty, this, if I've been honest with you, Luke, because there's a lot of fans that feel this is on Frank in relation to the way that second half went. But there's also a lot of people that feel the players should be held a lot more accountable than what they are right now. And just to also bring that balance, because look, people might feel I'm against Thomas Frank here. I'm struggling really hard in general long term to think, are we going to get much, much better under Frank? That's my biggest problem right now. When I look back again in the earlier part of the season, in some of the games, and the way we were playing and the structure we were playing, I could see a little bit of a plan in terms of what we're looking to do. I thought back to the first half, yes, the first half was a lot better. But I think like Russ said, that should be the benchmark. And Luke, I just want to come back onto this with the players as well, because for those that aren't aware of this is a staggering stat. 4 wins from 24 Premier League games in the last 14 months for Spurs. They failed to beat Fulham twice, Wolves twice, Bournemouth twice, Ipswich, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, Brighton, Sunderland in that time. Whatever we think about Thomas Frank, the board, whoever, the squad that we've assembled for those results, Luke, and the manner of not being able to get wins in those respective games, something is massively wrong here, isn't it, Luke?
Yeah, 100%. And both things can be right at the same time. I don't think anybody is sitting there and saying that these players are as good as what we need them to be, or if we want to progress, these are the players that we need to have, or anything like that. It's just that should we be getting more from these players? 100%, especially when we go on the last tenure. That was one of the reasons why Frank was sort of coming in, was to coach this squad, improve the really low bar that we had as a negative when we played poorly under Ange. It was really, really low, and Frank was going to coach these players and improve that level. So I don't think it's fair to blame Frank for everything. Similar to, I don't think it's fair to blame the players for everything. I think both players and manager has to take some sort of criticism. I definitely think that in the second half, I definitely agree with Marlon that people were getting tired. But again, Tell hasn't played much because he hasn't played him. That you can't then turn around and say, oh, well, Tell hasn't played. Yeah, I know, but you brought Johnson on 4 days ago when you knew he was signing for another club. So how about if you'd have brought Tell on for that time, and Tell would have, even if he just had 15, 20 minutes here and there, maybe he would have been able to impact the game a bit more today. And also, I think the other thing to that is it wasn't like when the Palhinha substitution came, our attitude to the game changed. For me, soon as that halftime whistle went, our attitude for the game changed. We looked like, from the 46th minute, we looked like we were ready to just sit back and hold on to this lead. And that is simply the difference, is that when some managers will turn around and go, I just need to get a second here. Whereas at the moment, and I'm hoping it's only at the moment, Frank's going, let me just see if I can just hold out. And it's not holding out. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't expect a team to attack for 90 minutes. I generally don't think that's a case.
No.
You have to have games, particularly in cup games and things like that. You have to have games where you just set up really, really defensively. I get that. I'm not saying that shouldn't happen, but there are certain times where that's the revert to type. For me, we should be reverting to that type as a standard. And as I said earlier, like the first half, we were winning. We were the dominant team and we were creating chances. And Marlon's right, we was missing chances as well. But why are players missing chances? Maybe that's because they're so unused to being in these positions, because we don't attack. It's like defending. It's like defending. If you're constantly defending all of the time, you're more likely to make mistakes because you're doing it in a defensive manner. The more you attack, the more likely you are to. I think it was a couple of weeks back when the cross came in and it went straight in, and everyone was going, "Oh, I can't believe how lucky teams are." No, if you keep attacking and you keep putting balls into the box, you keep tempting fate that a defender's going to make a mistake or the ball's going to drop to a striker a yard out and he's going to have the easiest tapping of your life, because you're putting yourselves in that situation to kind of earn that. So I completely agree. I think that this isn't solely on Frank at all. I wouldn't say that that's fair. I would say that the players have to take some accountability. I mean, the Palhinha one, for me, I was screaming at the telly. All we need is someone to come on and just control that middle, just for 10 minutes. Just take the sting out of Sunderland, because every time you play a game, regardless whether you're home, away, top versus bottom, the other team have a 10-minute spell. That's just what happens in football. They have a 10-minute spell. We needed someone experienced to come on the pitch, in the middle of that pitch, and just dominate and just say, right, we're not giving anything away here. We're going to keep the ball well. And in theory, Palhinha should have been that player, really, to just come on and do that. He's got the experience. He's played. And that's where we're lacking. And that's why we are going to make mistakes here and there. But I think if we would have played in the first half, if we'd have played that again in the second half and we'd have drew 1-1, I think loads of the fans would have gone, okay, I get it. I can see where we're going here. Personally, that's what I think they would have done, because they can see where you can see something. Whereas in the second half, again, it was just like, we're just waiting to get beat. We'll just keep coming at us and we're hoping we can hold out. Whereas again, the first half, you could see what Frank was trying to do. So as much criticism you can give either player or manager in the first half, you then have to be equal and fair to say that for the second half as well. So we definitely need to upgrade. Nobody's saying that. The players, we need to have better players to go where we want to go. But you can't say that we shouldn't be getting better out of these players, and that Frank should also be getting more out of some of these players, particularly as well, because I think the level of some of them has been pretty poor for a while now.
Russ, I want to come back round to you. We're going to hear from Thomas Frank in a second. I've had a couple of nudges towards some of Adam Nathan's tweets on X. So Adam, hope I'm giving these a shout out. Adam says the Christmas period wraps up with 2 goals from set pieces, both scored from half a yard by one a defender holding a midfielder. Part of it is certainly on the players for sure, but the lack of quality that can be put away, I just can't believe we can't be more daring with regards to the players that we've got. Is that fair, Russ? Is the manager being as daring as he can? He suggested he was being daring by sitting on the seat on Friday.
I think that he's still coming to terms with the fact that we're a lot bigger than Brentford as a football club, and I think there is probably an element of fear that he would never admit to. I mean, you know, he's a Scandinavian, he's straight talking, he's pragmatic. It's what they are. And what worries me is that I don't see any enthusiasm for him to say, hey, okay, well, maybe we're going to try something else in the next game. You know, it's just, you know, he started calling out the fans and what have you, as we know, and saying rather strange things that upsets people who pay £1,300, £1,400, £1,500 a year for a season ticket, who almost are not allowed to have an opinion. Thank God, Rick, for shows like yours and other podcasts. But I think it's a bigger problem with the football club. Thomas Frank is going through a bad time. Last season and the season before, we had a cavalier, all-attacking manager. We are what we are, mate, who won a European trophy, but was absolutely dreadful in the second season in the Premier League. And most of these players didn't play very well for him. So should we be surprised that they're not playing very well for Thomas Frank? Of course not. And then before that, you know, we've had Nuno, who lasted 15 games. He wasn't really given a chance. So Thomas has done quite well lasting as long as he did, you know. And then Conte, one of the great managers in the world, still not good enough for us. You know, Jose Mourinho, well, I don't like the way he plays. It seems to me that part of the problem is us lot, the fans as well. We're a bit impatient, and I understand why. But, you know, I said it the last time I was on the show, just to get rid of Thomas Frank ain't going to solve the problems, because at the end of the day, it is quality and desire to play for the football club. And I don't see a lot of that.
Just on that point about the players, Marlon, I'll come over to you again. Forgive me, Adam Nathan, again, a really good message here that I was highlighted to. This shows in terms of this game how poor and neglectfully we've had the squad. The senior players who we own, Richie was bought in 2022, 1 suspended in Xavi Simons, 4 injuries in terms of James Maddison, Dominic Solanke, Dejan Kulusevski, and now Mo Kudus. Johnson sold. 7 signs since 2020. I mean, it's just not good enough, Marlon, is it? You know, the mismanagement in this squad. And I read out those results earlier that we've had in the 14 months. I mean, we're getting a lot of answers, aren't we? The squad is nowhere near what it needs to be.
It's depressing.
It's depressing, but you know, at some point, Marlon, we are 4 or 5 days into the January transfer window. How about rather than letting players go, we try and bring players in?
Yeah, no, we said this the other day. Like, we've got to start being accountable for our actions at the moment, and we're not. Like, we've sold Brendan Johnson. Does Brendan Johnson make a slight bit of difference today? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. We'll never know. That's a hypothetical question. But the way Frank's been using him for the last 3 or 4 months, probably not. Look, I look at it like this. There's 2 situations today that really cost Tottenham Hotspur. 2 situations. And I mentioned one with Nicolo Mawani where he takes it out wide, where his first touch has got to be better. I'm sorry. You're a forward. You're a 90 million euro forward as well that you went to PSG for. How you're not controlling that, I don't care what club you're at, you should be controlling that in your path. The second one was Richarlison, where he takes an extra touch and doesn't cross the ball where it's Mawani got a tap in. He then ends up, I don't know what he ends up doing, trying to cross it across, and it ends up hitting Sunderland players. And these are the margins at the moment. The reason why these players are not good enough is situations like that where you go, you're just not clever enough. What are you doing? And that's the biggest problem right now with some of our players and our attacking forward players. We can sit there and go, oh, this, that, and the other. But when you look at situations like that, you're looking at going, well, what manager is going to do something? And this is where I think a lot of us are at the moment. If we get rid of him tomorrow, do you trust the board to go and employ someone that's going to get something out of these players? And the question is, we're relying on a board that we're still new to. Okay, if to be said what's right, it was them that employed Frank. Okay, let's just take it for what it is. We don't know if Levy had any part to play with it, but a lot of us said this club was going downhill when Levy was in charge. He's now gone, but that doesn't just stop because he's gone. That still carries on. That cloud is still hanging over us. Now, this board, we're now, 4 days into this window? They need to show some intent. They need to get rid of that dark cloud that man has left over. But the problem is, they're still acting like Enoch, the Enoch that we all wanted out. And at this present moment, they're not doing anything for us to move forward. Whoever the manager is who's going to come in, because for me, Frank's not long term. Frank is so short term. You can clearly see by the way the football he's playing, and the fact that the fans are not even on his side anymore, especially at home and away now. Once the away fans went, he's gone. He's a dead man walking. But at this present moment, he is here. We're mid-table. Like you said, the damning insight of where these players are and what players we're bringing in, it's a mess. And we need to suddenly fix this mess as soon as possible. And for me, Lange is part of the problem too. Paratici is part of the problem. And Vinay is part of the problem at this present moment. It's not just a one-way thing. They need to sort themselves out. And for me, anyone who, and this is why when Thomas Frank came in, I lost trust with them straight away. If anyone has gone and watched Brentford for the last 3 years, Brentford have never, ever controlled a game where they've won. When I say that, most of their percentages for the last have been under 50%. And then us Spurs fans are now expecting Frank to be controlling games and getting us over the line and being attacking. That's not what Brentford did. Brentford were never like that. And this is why I'm looking at it going, this is the reality of what Brentford were like. Apart from, as Russ pointed out earlier, they had Visa, Tony, Mbuemo, what's his name? Damsgaard. They had a bit more quality than what Spurs are having. For us, it's not functional. We might have the quality, not the quality, but we just don't have the system to get them going. And that's the biggest thing at the moment. And for me, it's a case of Frank goes tomorrow, but what is next? Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing. What's next? And I'm not saying if Frank goes tomorrow, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be upset. I'm just going to be in the middle going, I want to see what Enoch are going to do, because that's the biggest thing right now. It's up to Enoch to change this culture of this club and move it forward, because at this present moment, it's going in one direction and one direction only. And when you look at, we were meant to kind of build on that Europa League win.
That's what they told us.
Yeah. We've sold Sonny. We've sold Brennan Johnson, the match winner. And it's just like, we haven't built on it at all. We're literally just gone once, and my manager's gone as well. So you're kind of like, where are we going from here? So look, the next how many days left of this window is so important. So important. And for me right now, I'm just like, if there is going to be a temporary person in charge, let it be whoever it's going to be. Look, if Martin O'Neill's available, bring him in. Because you know what, he did the job at Celtic. Celtic are crying for him back. So it's like, I joke, but I'm not, like, at the same time, I'm thinking it probably wouldn't be a bad appointment, because at least he'll get the best out of the players for the next few months.
We'll come on to that. I mean, in the second part. Well, let's hear from Thomas Frank. We're going to go for that first break of the show for our listeners and audio. We've got over 6,500 of you watching us live. Thank you, as always, for incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. I said at the top of the show, I'm so sorry. New year, same old Tottenham. If you can, for us, keep liking, subscribing, hyping to the show. That'll be greatly appreciated. Let's hear from Thomas Frank and what he made of that performance against, of course, Sunderland.
I don't know if it was tiredness, but maybe just started to sit back a bit towards the end.
Yeah, I don't think that's too wrong. Pleased with the first half. I think we showed a lot of good intentions, a lot of good play. I think we came in some very good offensive situations where we lacked the cutting edge quality. So that was positive. And I think the big headline is we didn't score the 2-0 goal. We didn't kill the game off 2-0. Then the game we were out of sight. We gave nothing away throughout the game. We have won while they do a top bit of play, and then it's 1-1. So for me, it was the 2-0 goal. We lacked that. Second half, it was not. I think first I was very good. I think we were totally dominant. Second half, not as dominant, but still, that we still get into some very good situations, have some fantastic, but some good counter-attack situations where we need to get more out of it. You can't rely on in the Premier League just to win 1-0. Yeah.
Were you hampered by maybe not being able to bring on like for like substitutions in the second half?
Say again, sorry.
Were you hampered by not being able to bring like for like subs on?
I think it was a little we lacked a little extra freshness. I looked at some teams last night that just put 3 players on like for like, and then they run away with the win. A club we can't speak about, but that's probably also a little bit in it. So let me put it that way. That would have helped us. It's not the same that we couldn't have scored to 2-0 for the first 70 minutes.
Yeah. And the obvious follow-up question, I guess, would be especially from the fans, would be you didn't have Brennan Johnson to bring on. I mean, how the timing of that transfer, especially with Mo going off now injured. I mean, do you reflect on that at all? Is it timing-wise whether it was the best?
Yeah, the decisions are made, and decisions I'm backing in every aspect. And there's always more bigger picture stuff to some of those decisions. So sometimes they can look like perfect timing, sometimes look like not so perfect timing.
On that note, Thomas, do you accept it looks like a risk to have let him go at this point before you've got someone else through the door, and obviously Kudus has now got an injury?
Yeah. I think it's very important we took the decision before Mo got an injury. We don't know how it looks like, so I think that's one thing. And sometimes when you take that decision, sometimes you can't delay them if you want to, for example.
Fingers crossed Mo's not too bad, but either way, it shows that you don't have a lot of depth there. Does it make it even more important that the club do buy someone in that attacking position this January? Yeah,
I think we, as I said, we are out there. We are really, how can you say, alert. The club really want to see what we can do to strengthen the squad and the team. I say many times it's a difficult window, and we still need to have the short-term solution need to be the long-term solution as well.
Hi Thomas, can you just explain to the fans, I guess, the reasoning behind letting Brennan Johnson go? You said you sort of backed the decision. What's the kind of thinking with the club to let him go, given the depth, I guess?
I think the depth is one thing, so hopefully it makes bigger. Sometimes, the decisions make more sense further down the line. And now there was an opportunity to sell a player, which the club hasn't been that good at in the past. And sometimes that window can be small if you want to do that, for example.
Does it kind of leave you light, though, during a really busy time when, even before Mo's injury, you're missing sort of Xavi today, and Dejan Kulusevski's not back yet? It feels like you're light on goal scorers, I guess, and creative players. You can say that if we had Xavi and Mo for today, then I think we have enough. But now we, for this game, didn't have them, or Mo only for 10 minutes. So there's just some games where you're very light, and that happens. That happens for teams. And just with the subs, the first two was Bergvall and Palini. What was kind of the thinking there? And then obviously later on, Jed and Dan. You had Luca Williams Barnett there. Is that kind of a tough situation to put a teenager in?
Yeah, I think it was it was not a game where we were just boom on top of it and we just need that goal and we are just controlling the game. So if that was the case, then it could have been a different decision. I think when we put Xiao and Lucas on, there's been a lot of running and it was a little bit back and forth. Lucas played 10 many times and been a very good creative player for us. So that was more or less like for Wilson. And then Xiao for Archie is it's a game where I think it's fair to say maybe lacked the exactly cutting edge. Maybe it would be good just to make sure we could win 1-0, which we unfortunately couldn't.
It was a quite different performance from the one that we saw against Brentford. I just mean in terms of kind of pressing and urgency, even from the front and the back, I suppose. Was that a discussion that you had with the players on needing to kind of bring that sort of energy, or was it tactical? Is it something that you noticed within the team or the opposition?
I think there's two things in it. There's always different opponents, and then there's always a difference by playing home and away in terms of how do when you play with short turnaround games. That was, I think, the biggest thing. It was not that we didn't want to press high against Brentford. So if you saw that game, we still tried to press high. They just played a little bit longer. That means it was not as successful, it was not that visible. I think the biggest thing there was we just gave the ball away 200 times. That didn't help.
And Tell, player that we haven't seen very much of recently, started today and was really, really bright, particularly in the first half. Must be pleased with his contribution performance. Yeah,
I'm very happy with Machi stepping in and looked very positive. So that was that was a big positive, I would say.
Hello, Thomas. Hi. Can you give us your reasoning behind Ben coming in for Jed, and did you expect him to have that sort of impact with a goal?
It's nice that he scored the goal. I felt for this game that we needed a left footer, so that was the biggest reason. I think in the build-up, and I think he had some fantastic passes going forward, also some balls in behind, and also gave that little bit of calmness and controlled the game well. Plus a bit of leadership and helping Matt in front of him off diff. So and then we were playing 5 games in a short amount of time.
May I ask just one for clarity on Johnson? Are you saying to us that if you'd not done this deal now, it was impossible because of what Palace were saying? Or No. I just say sometimes the timings is not. There's a lot of. I guess it's always not. I'm not talking only about the Brennan situation. I guess there's 2 clubs that need to agree, and there's a player that needs to agree. So there's always a lot of things that impact things.
Thomas, do you think that was a performance and a result that deserved boos from some of your crowd today?
What I said many times, I really liked the backing and how the fans were with the team throughout the 90+ minutes. I think that was excellent. They pushed us forward, helped us in many ways. I'm sure everyone could acknowledge, especially the first half was positive and a step in the right direction, getting in good areas, doing all the right things. I'm 100% sure everyone could acknowledge the hard work and the effort from the players. That's all you can ask for. And then I think we all are a little bit disappointed that we couldn't get the 3 points.
So there you go. That was Thomas Frank there on the back of Tottenham Hotspur having a 1-1 draw at home to Sunderland in the Premier League. We're joined by broadcaster Russ Williams. We're joined by Luke from Spotlight on Spurs, Luke from Spotlight on Spurs, on there, and Marlon from Spurs Kings TV. Guys, thanks so much as always for incredible support for the show. If you can keep liking, hyping, subscribing to the platform, that would be greatly appreciated. Luke, I just want to come over to you. And before we get into some of the takes of the game, because we do need to also cover the window. Frank spoke about the transfer window there. He spoke about the sale of Brennan Johnson. He also spoke about also the decisions he made during the game. And he said that when we put João on for Lucas, there was a lot of running and it was back and forth. Lucas has played as a 10 and is almost a like-for-like with Wilson. Bergvall, a like-for-like with Odebear. Luke, what do you make of that comment?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that he's talking about from a positional sense. I hope he doesn't mean like a like-for-like player, because what Odebear offers and what Bergvall offers are completely different. One's a winger, one's a central midfielder. They're completely different players. And I don't think it was fair to even say that. I think the way that they came on today, the way Bergvall played their role today was completely different to what Odebear done. But again, there was different. It seemed to be like there was different setups in the first half and second half. So naturally they would do that. But yeah, quite a strange, as I said, quite a strange one. Positionally, maybe you could argue that they're both playing in that 10 position, but even so, at times today, I see Tell coming into the centre. Odebear was out on the left. They was kind of interchanging at times as well. I feel like them two, because obviously the national team, they've got a very good understanding of each other and where each other is. So I'm not really sure about that comment, but there has been a couple of comments that haven't really made sense to me, to be completely honest, and I think most of the fan base agree with that as well. It is interesting to hear what he says about Palace and the Johnson bid. Sometimes it makes sense for all parties, but we have to make sure that we've got players lined up, because if Johnson was available, I have no doubt Johnson would have been on the bench. and he would have come on at some stage. So we need to make sure that we give Frank every opportunity to be able to make his mark on this squad. And if we selling players off, I'm absolutely fine with it. I think most of the fan base agree that we should be moving some players on. Most clubs do it where they bring the player in first, but hey, sometimes we don't like to do things like the normal, so we'll do them a little bit differently. But as long as they line someone else up, we see today, obviously, Kudos, we know for a fact that he was going to get an injury, or someone was going to get an injury, because that's just what happens at Spurs, right?
Yep.
So hopefully it means that there is someone that's lined up ready to come in to make an instant impact. But yeah, I mean, as I say, that the like for like, I'm not so sure. As I say, I'm hoping he just means from a 10 point of view, playing in that 10 position, not the player is a very similar profile to the other player, because as I say, they're completely different players.
Yeah, I got to say, baffling when I heard that quote at the time. When you again hear him say it in real time, again, you start asking questions. Russ, he said on the transfer window, we are really, how can you say, alert? The club really want to see what we can do to strengthen the squad and the team. We're going to come on to the window to close the show, but just very quickly on that quote,
Yeah,
we're not the great reading of the room to allow players to go out first and bring players in. Is that fair, or is he right in just terms of opportunities come up and you have to take what you can at that right time? We may be working on deals.
well, it's been on the bum, hasn't it? Because Kudus got injured, and Brennan,
Brennan's gone.
Yeah, Brennan's gone. Kudus got injured, and we could have done with him.
Yep.
I think the only reason they sold Brennan Johnson might be because Thomas Frank didn't rate him well. I find that a bit hard to believe. I think it's because he's one of the few players who would have a decent return, in terms of income for the club. Because, a lot of them, they wouldn't even be in a yellow label fire sale the way that they're, playing at the moment. That's the reality of it. We've got, 3 or 4 pretty good players, Argentina who won the World Cup, our captain, Mickey van der Ven, Kulusevski when he's fit, Matters, of course, and then you start to think, well, hang on, who else? So what are they going to do with that money? That is the question. Are they putting it with the 150 million? We'll talk about it, I'm sure, a little bit later on. But, I think it's been messy, the departure of Brennan Johnson from Spurs. And you would have thought that Johan Langer and all the other powers that be would have identified players, would have been moving the moment the window opened. This is the new board, the new way of doing things. And sadly, the root of the problem at Spurs, as someone has just put, and I agree with them, is recruitment. It has been for many, many years. So we're left with a load of players who will go through the books as losses if they are sold. I wouldn't have thought many clubs would want them.
I have to come on with you, Marlon. Frank was asked whether the lack of depth is hurting the club. And he said, I looked at some teams in the previous games. They've just put 3 players on like for like, and they run away with the win. So let me put it like this. That would have helped us. I mean, that's probably as close as you're going to get to admitting the fact he needs help, Marlon. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, and that's what I said earlier. When you can't bring on like for like, you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
And today, it's probably the thinnest squad he's probably had all season, where he wasn't able to do that. And I know people are upset that he did go very defensive, but he had Dancer on the bench, Dragoshin on the bench, Spence on the bench, and Paulinho on the bench. And then you've got Kingsky as well. So most of the bench is made up of defensive players, and he's a defensive manager. And you look at the whole situation at the moment, how many attacking players can he choose from? The fact that Tell started, the fact, and who hasn't probably seen hardly any minutes. She scored his equaliser against Manchester United all them weeks ago. Might be a month now. And we haven't seen him since. So you have to look at it and go, the board have to do something. And then they went and sold Brennan Johnson in the meantime. And you just look at the whole situation, and it's just a massive mess. And is this a Frank issue, or is it a Tottenham issue? And at this present moment, it's a bit of both intertwined.
Yeah.
There's issues with Frank, but there's so many issues with this club that we've seen, because you've got to remember, our home record was before Frank.
Of course it was.
Right?
The home record started under Ange. Yes.
Yeah, the football's crap. Don't get me started on that. But the fact is, we went from one to the next to the next. So there's obviously a fundamental problem at the club, which is recruitment is always going to be the biggest bugbear for all of us fans. And at this present moment, it's just not recruitment of players, it's also recruitment of the manager.
Just on that point, recruitment of the manager, we've had about 70 questions come into our live X feed on Last Word on Spurs. Luke, the general vibe from what is coming across then, I always want the show to try and be as balanced as it possibly can, but I'd be lying if I said the general vibe of the questions that we've had in is along the lines of Spurs aren't really going anywhere under Thomas Frank right now, and is this a complete waste of everybody's time to keep on believing this at some point is going to start working when he is being given better players with better mentality and being able to ship out some of the players. I feel like the vibe at the moment is from those that feel this is going to work under Thomas Frank is they looked at Arteta at Arsenal, who didn't have a great start there, let's be honest about it. Well, 8th and 8th, and then they did see an uplift when they did have a changeover in squad. Can you see that here, Luke? Can you at least see what he's trying to do tactically that our players are failing to execute? Because, I mean, I think it's the big question we need to ask ourselves right now. We've got a massive game next week against Aston Villa in the FA Cup. And I think Russell atoned me is on that point as well. Spurs fans hold on to cup competitions. We did last season under Andrew, was in the Europa League. We kept on saying we've got that to hold on to despite the league form not being great. Can you at least see what Thomas Frank is trying to do generally? Because we've praised him for that first half, but can you see overall what we're trying to achieve here? And is this worth more time, Luke?
Well, I think everyone knew what he was going to try and achieve at Spurs in the case of we was terribly defensively last year. We was terrible. It was all over the place. So he was going to make sure that we was more solid and that we would be more effective. And I suppose wouldn't be as chaotic. I always say that you bringing in Thomas Frank to kind of stable that ship, right? And as I said, the lows were incredibly low and the highs were incredibly high last year. And I think Frank's brought in to kind of balance that ship out and make sure that the lows aren't as low, maybe the highs aren't as high, but we'll obviously see later on when he gets these players back. And I think that's what the people that are backing Frank are holding on to, the fact that we are missing a lot of attacking players. We do need to upgrade the squad as well. So when he gets these players back, he will in essence be better. It doesn't always work like that. It doesn't always work like that. You might have a better striker, but if you don't get the ball to him in the right areas, or if you don't create enough chances, then they ain't going to be able to score goals anyway. So there's a lot of that, and the facts is that no one really knows. Everybody's just guessing. You can use what happened at Brentford, but you're using it as a barometer that a very good, exactly what you've just described at Spurs is the complete opposite to Brentford. And this was one of the things I said when Frank was first mentioned. He's going into a club that's well run, that they're all aligned, they all fit, and that everybody's purchased and bought to fit a certain particular style and a way and a vision. The recruitment is fantastic. Obviously operating at what would normally would be a lower level to Spurs, but currently is actually a higher level. But these are all things he's not going to have at Spurs. He almost needs to be adept in being in a chaotic environment, because that's what Spurs will bring, whereas his environment was very calm. So we don't know any of this. Everyone, as I said, just making assumptions that this is what's going to happen. Brentford's plan, is it a case of they were targeting players that basically just needed a platform to go and produce? Whereas were they always going to be these sorts of players? Was Frank the guy, or Keith Andrews coming in, who's the set piece guy, has taken them to a better point score than they've ever been at? Is that because Keith Andrews is a better manager? I don't think so. I think it's just a case of he's just been able to continue on what he's done, what's already been set there. Obviously at Spurs, he's come in from one situation in terms of what Ange wanted and what he wants to do, and they're completely different things. So he's trying to reinvent every single thing, which is obviously difficult. But I don't think there's any point changing Frank right now. I don't see it. There's not going to be a huge difference. I think we need to get our players fit and we need to get better players through the door. And it doesn't matter who the manager is. We need to do those things. So I don't see the benefit in just getting rid of him now. I don't see how that benefits us, because as you've quite rightly said, and I think everyone agrees, that there's no standout candidate currently. Most managers that are decent managers probably are in jobs and therefore won't move in the middle of a season. You've also got, at the end of the year, you've obviously got the World Cup coming up and things like that. So you might have someone like, say, a Pochettino maybe, that the fan base is looking at. So I think it makes sense for everybody to stick with Frank until at least the summer, back him in January with better players than what we've got. And if at the end of the season things haven't improved and we're operating at a level that people are not happy with, then absolutely he would have. If he's been backed in January, then there's no excuse. You can't say if we got rid of him now, people could turn around and say he was never really backed. He wasn't given the tools he needed. Whereas if we give him a good January, see what he can do. And listen, we're all Spurs fans. We all want every manager coming and do.
Yeah,
Spurs do well. Yeah. I don't care who the manager is. I just enjoy seeing attacking football. I see, as I said, if that first half is where we're at, and Marlon is, and if Marlon's absolutely right, and it's a simple case of getting better players in, having his squad better, and that's the kind of way that he's going forward. Absolutely, I'm on board with that 100%. I don't think Spurs have ever been good as a defensive team under any manager. No. I feel like as a fan base, especially at that stadium, as soon as you start being defensive, the fans start getting all tetchy and edgy, and I think we're just better off being an attacking team anyway. But yeah, I'm not someone who thinks that sacking Frank is gonna solve things. I said all last year, the recruitment, the medical team, the management, the ideas, the ownership, everything. There needs to be a vision and an idea and an understanding, and that's what we all need to push for, because chopping and changing every 5 minutes doesn't help anyone. And it's why we've got so many players that don't fit particular systems or don't fit particular managers. It's because we chop and change constantly and far too much, in my opinion.
Ross, just coming to you. We had some interesting comments coming to the show here. Dyson Centre says 10 points from the last 33 available, 0.91 points per game, average of under 35 points over a whole season. Frank oversaw a Brentford side in the 23-24 season that had a run of 3 wins, 4 draws and 14 defeats. Gary Turner says here, surely getting interim in Redknapp and Carrick this season can be salvaged. Wake up. Enoch. Dara says, this is crazy how people are still backing this guy. He's the most negative manager that has been brought at a bigger and has created a bigger rift between the fans and the club that I've ever known. And so, boy, Spurs, he says, panel, better players will not change the mentality of the manager. Money will not be spent. We will not spend the money, or we want to make not spend money. I'm not quite sure what he's trying to say there. We want to make not spend money. I'm not sure we understand.
Well, I think he's saying we don't want him to be given money because it isn't going to make any difference, in his opinion. Who knows? He could be right. The only thing we all know is at the moment, any manager wouldn't have the tools to match the ambition of us, the Spurs fans, and presumably the owners of the club. Although, I think we could seriously question whether they have the same ambitions as us. And this is, the problem really, isn't it? Would we be better with James Maddison back to full fitness and Kulusevski? Yep, of course we would. Although Decky, for example, before his injury was on a pretty poor run of form. So, he's not going to come back and be like the Messiah. Fresh blood breeds new ideas and new ambition. And I think Luke is absolutely right. They will stick with him until at least the summer. And if they don't give him anything, despite all the fans are just saying, no, we've had enough, let's wash our hands of him, he can go now, then the criticism justifiably could be levelled at the club that, well, he didn't even back the last manager. So who's going to be forming an orderly queue to take over from Thomas Frank at a declining football club, which is what we are at the moment? We either dig in, show some balls, and all come together and, hope it gets better. I know hope, is a great fear for many people, but it might just work. Or we just accept that we're going to be a lot more lowly than we think we are, or we have been in recent years, because, it's a combination of things. And it's too easy to blame Thomas Frank.
I think that's fair. I mean, look, someone suggesting also, again, on that point for that balance, it's not all down to Frank. This run of form is about 80% down to the players. They have an attitude and think they are better than what they are because they've won that singular trophy. There's also an argument, a bit more quality in this team, and we would have beaten Sunderland. And look, it's a real tricky one, Marlon, coming over to you, because, we've currently got the 4th worst home record in the league. Only 3 teams have a worse home record than us. They're in the current bottom 3 right now. But we're openly admitting here that the manager's not the biggest problem at the football club. But if anyone else was to read those stats, probably they would come to the conclusion the manager's the biggest problem. But we know at Tottenham, it's not as easy just blaming the manager because of the amount of issues we've got still at the football club. We're just a massive conundrum, aren't we?
Yeah, I think the problem is when we look at the big picture, Frank is the problem because of the football we're playing.
Yes.
So the stats that are there, they don't lie.
Don't lie.
Okay?
Those are the stats. Yes.
They don't lie. That is what Frank is trying to play. The problem is that when we look at the bigger picture of it, there's just more and more issues that keep following us, and they just keep carrying on. And the game-changing stadium that we were spoke about, that we were told we were going to get, it changed the game, but it's completely, we just can't win there. And we need to, what we haven't done since we've been there is build a squad that's worthy enough to be playing in there week in, week out, that's going to please the fans as well. And at this present moment, the club just don't know what direction they want to pull in, because if you look at each manager, we've probably had more defensive managers since we've been at the stadium than we have attacking, and that's where it lies. Because Jose, Nuno, Conte, and now Frank, the only attacking manager we had was Ange. Yep. He brought the trophy, but unfortunately, we conceded way too many goals. We were way too open, and there hasn't been that happy medium balance. And this is where the club's got to try and find its identity behind the scenes, which will then bring the identity in the front end, and it will bring the fans back on side. Because at this present moment, I think what it was, a lot of the fans gave it a couple of months to see how this was going to turn out. And they've said, no, we don't want this. This is not what we signed up for. This is not what we paid our season tickets for. This is not why we travel up and down the country for. Yeah. Not for this football. And a lot of us who pay our TV as well, and we're having to watch Tottenham at this present moment. I felt sorry for Sky Sports because their last Super Sunday of the year happened to be Crystal Palace Spurs, which was one of the worst games. And then on Wednesday, they got all those Premier League games out, and they've put in more football on TV. And you're like, come on, this is just not it. And Frank, at the moment, I think we were the worst game of the night that against Brentford. And then we've come to today, and yes, we wasn't as bad. And that's the thing. We wasn't as bad. It wasn't what we wanted to see, but it was positives to it. But then, as Frank alluded to, when you can't bring on like for like, and he has used them lot down the road, it's taken 5 years for them to do that. But my always thing is, I'm not going to sit there and say we should be doing what Arsenal were doing, because Vinay was there when Unai Emery was there. They didn't back him. And this is what I think Thomas Frank is to us. He's the Unai Emery of this situation. And it's going to be the next manager, hopefully, will be the one that will take us forward. But they've really got to think long and hard about it now, because they can't be picking someone on top. They can't be looking at Thomas Frank thinking he was the man to take us forward. And that's why I said the recruitment of the manager is just as bad as the players at the moment. Yeah. I mean, 2 wins in the last 11, like I mentioned. But we keep having this conversation on a weekly basis, and the fans keep raising these concerns, which is why, again, we keep having the conversation. I try and, for the podcast itself, it's aligned as close to the fans as it can be on the terraces. So if it's not a conversation, we wouldn't be having it. But it appears it's a weekly, game-by-game conversation right now. We're going to have to see how things are going to pan out. These next few weeks will tell us more, of course, that big game for Spurs to come in the FA Cup, of course, against Aston Villa. We are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners and audio. We're going to hear from the goal scorer from this game, Ben Davies. Then we're going to talk a little bit in terms of the key incidents and, of course, close on the January transfer window and where Spurs are at. Let's hear from Ben Davies in 2026. It tells you everything you need to know, is it, when we're saying Ben Davies in 2026. Nothing against Ben. Lovely, lovely guy, but this is where we're at. Let's hear from Ben Davies.
Ben, not to be today, just give me your take on the result.
I think it was a game of two halves, really. First half, I thought we were very good. We dominated the ball. We dominated the game, could have scored a couple, and second half they came with a lot more intensity. We probably struggled on the ball to match it at times, but there were opportunities where they went a bit gung-ho and left a few spaces behind, and that's where I think we probably missed a chance to capitalise and make it to the end. Obviously when they throw the pressure on like they did, and they got the goal, which was a bit of a sucker punch, really.
Is that a kind of natural part of a side playing like they did, throwing everything at it, that they're going to leave gaps, and you almost have to be ruthless when you get those opportunities?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you want to punish teams when they take risks against you, and second half they definitely did. There were moments where they left the defenders one-on-one, and it was like a 50-50 moment that could have gone either way, and those are the moments where really you need the ball to bounce in your favour, to go your way and be clinical when you get the opportunities.
And talk me through the goal. I mean, again, I know it wasn't to be today, but it was lovely to hear the crowd singing your name and singing Ben Davies, he scores when he wants.
Yeah, it was really nice. It's those are the things in football you miss when you're not playing, right? And to get out there to score today, to hear the fans, I feel like I've got a good relationship with the fans here. I think we all have gone through good times, bad times together, and right now I feel like how hard it is at times, but we're building something, I hope, and we really got to stick together, and I feel definitely part of that.
Can you take me into that a little bit? I mean, you've seen so many styles of football, different managers, different coaches. What do you need when you're going through a bit of a rough patch?
Togetherness more than anything. I think it's the same in most things in life. The moment you start to point fingers or just fall apart at the seams a little bit, it becomes tougher, and it's hard to climb that mountain on your own. But as a group, I think we have a chance. We have to stick together as much as we can. We really want to stick together with the fans here. We're a group. We understand their frustrations, but that's like represented in the team as well. We're frustrated. You want to be winning games like we did, like we should have today when we played so well. But look, sometimes in football you have these moments, you have these ups and downs, and it's not for a lack of fight. We got a group in there that's trying hard. We just need to fine tune it a bit and get it right on the match day.
So that's Ben Davies there. I've got to say, look, for the stick he sometimes gets, Ben, and he speaks so well. He's a great ambassador for the football club. He really, really is. Such a lovely, lovely guy. And I'm so pleased for him. He was part of that group that did win a trophy. Such a top human being. And again, look, just to be very, very clear, Ben is here because obviously at the moment from a club perspective, Thomas Frank feels he still needs him. And again, that's no criticism again of Ben Davies, but just kind of where we are right now. And again, I think we have to be real and say this, that if Spurs really were competitive and were a side that can really push on, would Ben have been here for the time he would have been? That's questionable, but you can't question the human being that he is. Absolute top guy, Ben Davies there. Thanks to, again, always, Broadcaster Russ Williams, Marlon from Spurs Kings, Luke from Spotlight on Spurs. Thanks to the other 8,500 that are still suffering with us. Thank you as always. Keep hyping, liking, subscribing to the show. We're not going to take everybody back through the game, although the first half was a good first half. But like Russ said earlier, that's kind of where we've got to now in terms of the level that we've become accustomed to. It was a good first half. Tottenham, of course, they made a couple of changes to the starting lineup. A couple of them, of course, were enforced in terms of the lineup for this one. We saw, obviously, Spurs selling Brennan Johnson beforehand. So, of course, he wasn't part of the squad. Lucas Bergvall was back on the bench. And Frank, to be fair to him, obviously, with the absence of Xavi Simons, continued to have to find an element of creativity to his team. He lined up with Vicario, Porro Romero, Van der Ven, Davis, Bentancur, Gray, Tell, Kudus, Odebear. Nice to see those two guys back in the lineup. Richarlison leading the line. A bench of Kinski, Dragashin, Danzo Polina, Bergvall, Spence, Kolo Muani, Dane Scarlett, Luke Williams Barnett, who was called for in the previous game. He was on the bench. Odebear starting as the 10, with Kudus on the right and Tell on the left. And we mentioned that Claxon, Spurs did register a shot on target within the first minute. Great intent from Matty Tell as Frank calls him to get an open shot on target. But again, this point we're at now with Kudus, we haven't had an update there from Thomas Frank in terms of his injury. I mean, Russ, to start with, it's almost sod's law that we'd lose Kudus because, yes. Well, you could make it up. It's Tottenham, right? Days after Johnson's departure, Kudus goes off with an injury. The worrying thing that I would say, Russ, that he kind of instantly knew his game was over and Mawani replaced him. So not only do we sell Johnson to Palace last week, we also, again, lose one of the very few goal threats that we have on the pitch. So big blow for the football club. And we obviously await an update on him. Russ, concerns, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, somebody said on social media shortly after he came off, when he walked out, I thought he didn't look fit. Could have been a coincidence, but maybe they saw something muscular that didn't quite look right. But, I mean, it looked pretty innocuous, didn't it? It was right at the top of the thigh, wasn't it?
Yep.
And, straight away, again, substitute, and that was that. So I feel sorry for him because I did feel in the first half he was starting to look a little bit like the Mo Kudus that played in the first few games when he joined the club, and that was great to see because let's face it, we've had no sparks going forward for a long while. So when we all see one, we get all excited and we could have turned the corner, but hey, there you are. Sad for him.
Yeah, and I'm worried, like I say, I mean, one of the very few players we've got from an attacking perspective in the 11 that we rely on, and we're now waiting further updates on his injury situation. Luke, I'm going to come over to you. Like I said, it was a good half an hour, 40 minutes or so in terms of the way Tottenham pressed. They were aggressive. They were on the front foot. Isn't it you want to see from a Tottenham side? We did get our just rewards from what I now am being told is our 9th goal from a corner. They're almost becoming routine these days in terms of Spurs getting goals from set pieces. Forget open play. It's all about getting them now from set pieces. A good move, Luke, and finish off by, as we said, Ben Davies at the back post, but good work from Romero to find Davies for the goal, Luke.
Yeah, well worked all at set pieces. Obviously become part of Thomas Frank's identity at Brentford, and then obviously with us. I think Tell's been involved, although he hasn't had so many minutes. I feel like his delivery has brought us quite a few goals from corners. I might be wrong on that, but yeah, it's quite funny because you got Romero got the pre-assist, Van der Ven gets the assist, and Davies scores. So 3 of the back 4 have all been involved in setting up that goal in the other opposition's box. So great for Ben Davies, though, as you said, such a great human, and all clubs have players like Ben Davies around in terms of personality and character. That's how clubs function. They have
over 11 years, Luke. Are we sure about that?
That's the only thing is that obviously when we signed him, he came in as a backup left back, and 12 years later or whatever it is, he's still a backup left back. So, but that goes down to exactly what we've been discussing, where the club have gone wrong, right? So, but yeah, as I say, from the kickoff, the intensity was correct. That first half, as I say, that needs to be the benchmark of where we go. And as I said, the guys are all right. If we can use that as the benchmark and bring in the right numbers, I'm going to try and play devil's advocate with Kudus. I'm going to try and hopefully that means that the club realise we can't mess around with whatever we've got. I think we all in agreement that Johnson going.
This is Tottenham, right, Luke?
But Johnson going must mean that there is a winger coming in. It absolutely has to. Surely, Spurs, it must mean that because we're light in that position now. Obviously, Kulusevski, I know we've mentioned about him coming back. Kulusevski is not going to be up to speed anytime soon. Any little injury Kulusevski got, he always took just that little bit of time to kind of get back into the rhythm. So surely that must mean a winger's going to be the priority. We was looking at one in the summer in terms of the left wing. Johnson going must just push that along. And obviously with this injury, maybe it just means, look, let's just push the boat out that bit longer. Yes, that's me being optimistic. I know no one's going to agree with me, but let's try and do it the flip side. But yeah, as I say, I definitely feel like we need to use the first half as the benchmark.
Yeah, well, Spurs apparently, like you say there, Luke, they are exploring options for that side of the pitch. Now, have still got keen interest in both Savinho and Diamande, so we'll see how they do progress and whether either of them do end up joining Spurs in this January transfer window. I say for Ben Davies, his first goal in more than 2 years to mark his first start of the season. The Spurs fans, as he was referencing that interview there, was singing Davies again, ole, ole, ole. And it was a good first half, Miles, at the point where the fans were applauding. It's not happened often this season. The fans applauded the players off at half time. And, again, we've got to say, Tell and Odebear were bright. Richie was causing problems in a set-piece goal via Ben Davies. I mean, in terms of a first half, might be Regency bias here. Is that one of the best that we've had so far this season, definitely?
Yeah.
you have to think about it. It's definitely the case, right?
Probably, I don't know, actually. Yeah, maybe. It was the brightest one at home. I'm going to say at home because we've had good halves away from home where we've been okay. So, look, it was exactly what the doctor ordered. I think a lot of people saw the lineup, and when we saw Tell and Davis in it, a lot of people thought, "Oh, here we go again." But actually, and didn't really. And then obviously Kudus and Odebear was playing. It was on, and whether I thought Kudus was going to play behind the striker, and I thought they've been listening to Last Word on Spurs because Luke and Patty both said, "Why didn't Kudus play behind on Wednesday?" They both said it, but actually it turned out that Odebear played behind Richarlison instead. But it just looked promising. It looked like. I think Luke said it earlier where every time Tell gets the ball, he wants to do one of 3 things. Either wants to cross it in the box, take on his man, or pass it forward. He doesn't he hates passing it back. You can tell if he passes it backwards, he thinks he's doing something negative. That might be the Bayern Munich in him that they've taught him, that something like that. But it was actually quite positive from him. I think what it also meant is that because Ben Davies was behind him, you didn't have a Jed Spence overlapping him. You didn't have on that left wing. So maybe that's kind of helped the situation and brought more balance to the team. I don't know, because when we turn up against Bournemouth on Wednesday, who the hell knows what Tottenham's going to turn up. So for me, it was like I watched that first half. Even I sat there and went, I'm not bored. I'm not sleeping. However, I'm looking at it going, after what happened against I'm forgetting games now because they're all sing at Brentford. It was just better. And when we go back to our last home game against Liverpool, how we started, it was better. But that was it. It was just better. And I think at the present moment, we're giving Frank a lot of leeway because of how bad it's been.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I agree. Second half, we saw a busy period for Ben Davies. He first cleared an effort in front of the Spurs goal, then sent a header at the keeper at the other end. Vicario at one point, I know it was offside, but caught in absolute no man's land. He actually got lucky on 2 occasions. He couldn't stop Brobbey's rocket low of an effort that did get their equaliser. And you know what? Spurs, again, it comes back to that point where the change that we made in the second half definitely affected us. But I do feel from the minute Sunderland kicked off in that second half, or Spurs kicked off, forgive me, that Sunderland in that second half, definitely the intensity went up and we just couldn't seem to handle it. And, we saw those changes being made, that double change. They saw Zhao put in a Lucas Bergvall replace Archie Gray and Wilson Odegaard, who took a whack to his face the seconds before that. We were given a warning, Russ. We were given a warning because Lafay sent a header against the outside of the right-hand post. And then seconds later, this was the build-up to this goal. There's a massive, massive gap in the middle for listeners and audio where you would think there should be somebody there that would be screening or helping the back four. There wasn't. Brobbey hits an equaliser for Sunderland. He runs in between Romero and Porro and latches it home. And it felt like, Russ, to be fair, that goal had been coming.
Oh, definitely. Look, and he was a really strong player against those 2 defenders. I mean, do you remember when we used to have strikers who could do that? Push defenders out of the way and score goals, and we haven't, and that's why we haven't scored in open play for just over 10 hours. But this gap, I mean, there it is, the great black hole of N17. And we're looking at it right now. It's quite incredible, really.
It is,
because the ball comes in from the right-hand side, and even though there's 4 defenders there, he still manages to outmuscle 2 of our very best and scores a goal. But we all knew it was coming, didn't we?
But is that on Frank in terms of the way they're being tactically torn apart for that goal there, Russ? When you look at that image that we're sharing here.
If Thomas Frank has told them to play like that and have an acceptable gap in midfield like that, I'd be amazed. But if he had, he should be sacked. And I don't think he has.
Yeah. I mean, look, whilst we have the thoughts on the quality of the squad, that Sunderland goal, what I would say, I don't know if you agree on that, Luke, the manager allows them to play so quickly in forward areas. But I just don't think we see that enough under Thomas Frank. And this situation where even shots outside the box, they're at a rarity, Luke, aren't they? Anything about Tottenham really is inside the 6-yard box. There's very little shots from outside the box. And I'm trying to hang our hope and this is going to improve because the games that are coming up, as we know, Luke, and it gets to that point where we'll have to also show the February fixtures. January's tricky, don't get me wrong. We've got Villa to come, of course. I mean, at West Ham, they may feel they're already down at the moment. They may make a managerial change ahead of that game. Then we've got, of course, a couple of Champions League games to come. Sandwiched in between that, we've got Burnley away. But February, Luke, we know, Man City, Tottenham have got at home. Then Man United away. Then Newcastle at home. Spurs have got. And then Arsenal away. I mean, February definitely looks like a tough period for us, Luke. And this was meant to be, for us, quite a favourable run of games.
Yeah, I've been saying for ages, especially if you're in a little bit of a negative headspace, whether it be poor form, not playing well, whatever that may be, every single fixture in the Premier League looks more and more difficult, no matter where you're going or who you're playing. You sit there and look at the bottom team, Wolves, and you kind of like, that's going to be a difficult game. When in theory, if you was full of confidence, you're kind of thinking, we'll pick up 3 points there. That won't be a problem. There's reports coming out literally in the last few minutes saying that West Ham are going to give Nuno one more game as well. So they'll no doubt have a new manager bounce when we play them, which will be their biggest game of the season. They're difficult. The fixtures, as I say, no matter what sort of run you're on, if you've just won 3 on the trot, you're looking at all games going, we can go and we could win there, or we could play well there, and we could nick it, whatever. But if you're playing negatively, or if you're struggling, then every single game is difficult. And then normally when you're in that tough run, you kind of look at your home fixtures and go, well, look, let's see if we can battle and get them there. And actually, we're worse at home than we are away. So we're in a real difficult one. But it could be a great benchmark for Frank, specifically for them February, if we can get him a good window, and then he picks up some good results, because I think a few people are saying that he needs a big result. Like if he gets a big result against a big team, that could hopefully deviate away from the negativity surrounding him, and we kind of go on a bit of a run possibly. But as I say, it all bears down to, and it always has done. It has done for ages. Russ mentioned it earlier. It falls down to recruitment. And there's some people in the chat saying, I don't trust Frank with this money. The managers don't have the money. It's not the managers that have the money.
Yeah.
The recruitment team has to be better. And I think all of the reservations, it all caters around whether we've got the right idea and understanding as a club where we want to go and who we want to be. Because whether Frank's here or it's anybody else, we need better players. So I'm not trusting Frank with 100 million or 150 million. I'm trusting the club to go and get him better players, and then him manage those better players. We can clearly see what we need. Everybody could see it in the summer. It's the same thing now. We need a winger. We need a midfielder that can come on and dictate that ball. That show that you put up there, the slide, sorry, just that big hole in midfield. You just need a midfielder. As I said, Palhinha's in that clip. You just bring an experienced player that's...
I'll tell you what though, Luke, also on that, Romero's mindset is worrying me. He appears to be out of position for Sunderland's equaliser, and he spent most of his time in the follow moments up as a striker. I mean, look, yes, we're looking for a winner, but I just worry about Romero's temperament. And Bentancur, to be fair, he won a lot of his tackles, though. He snapped into challenges. Afterwards, the South American guys is, again, not a target on those kind of players, but they're normally all or nothing with a manager. Their mindset worries me. Romero's head at times looks absolutely gone. Bentancur snapping into challenges. I don't know. It just worries me. Players' mindset worries me.
I think again it comes down to playing in a. They're frustrated with maybe the way not playing as a team, but just individually. Romero's made a couple of mistakes. Bentancur's come in for a bit of criticism. I think it carried on after the game as well. So sometimes that's a factor in it as well. Just to make sure, and also, and I've been saying this particularly with Frank. Frank is and Marlon touched on it earlier. Frank is a moments manager. That's what he does. He doesn't go and dominate games. He never has done. He creates moments, and then when you're talking about XG, he wants everything to be as efficient as possible. So the whole idea is that you shoot from outside the box, there's less chance of scoring, and if you got closer, etc., etc. But you need to be able to factor in the skill level of certain players. So yeah, if Maddison's shooting from outside the box, that's one thing, and if it's Bentancur, then that's a completely different thing. So they all need to be factored in. But again, he might get more and more comfortable with the players and understanding what they can and can't do, and then you can go from there. But as I say, I just feel like a lot of what was good about Brentford is the partnerships that they had, whether it be the centre backs together, the centre midfielders together, the right back or the right winger. And I don't feel like we've got good partnerships all around the pitch. I think that the midfield, I've seen so many people say, "Oh, Frank doesn't know his best midfield," and I'm like, "Do you?" Because I guarantee if we all picked out, if 100 Spurs fans picked their best midfield, there would be so many different combinations. Bentancur would be in loads, then he'd be out of loads. Palhinha would be in some, he'd be out of some. So you can't necessarily say that that's all on him. Again, it's a part of being able to have the right partnerships in and around. Now, what works with one might not work with another. And also, I've been saying this as well for a long time now. Every single game we play, there are going to be differences in. So we're playing in the Champions League. We can go from 1 week playing Real Madrid away to playing Burnley at home or Wolves at home. You're going to want different midfielders in them games. You're going to want them to do different things. So that is also a part of it that we need to understand. There's so many games being played. You put up the fixtures there. It feels like we're playing every 2 or 3 days. So the players are going to have to be moved around. We've got, it's the 4th today. We've got one on the 7th, one on the 7th, one on the 10th. So the players are going to have to be moved around, and that's again goes back to that's why we need to get different players in with different profiles. I think the two main positions that if we're serious and Frank gets some serious back in, for me, we need to get a winger and we need to get a midfielder that's really comfortable having the ball and almost dictating a bit of play. Because I think whenever we get beat, most weeks we get beat, we're beaten by a better midfield. As someone who's just taken the game by the scruff of the neck and gone, right, I'm going to... And Xhaka done that a little bit today. In the second half, Xhaka started to really take a little bit of leadership in there, saying, give me it in difficult positions. And I feel like that's what we need to... Not saying go and get Xhaka, I'm saying we need to go and get a player that's willing to go and do that. Yeah. And at the moment, I don't feel like we've got one.
Yeah, and I suppose I have to make a decision, obviously, in the summer on João Palhinha, who's not playing many games at the moment. And obviously for Tottenham, he's currently on loan, so they've got a decision to make there. Look, we're going to close very quickly, a quick five on the transfer and where we are, because Spurs have had a bid going for a player. It's been rejected. Russ, I'm going to come to you. I want to quickly just read up where we are, and you'll give us your thoughts in terms of what we need to do. So Tottenham had an 8 million bid for Santos left-back Souza turned down, and are hesitant to accept the bid for the teenager, whom they have higher hopes for and believe his value may increase in the future. Now, there is a release clause worth, I understand, 52 million for the Brazilian, and also a release clause worth 87.1 million for overseas clubs. Now, he's come through the youth ranks. He made his top flight debut in May of last year. He's made 24 appearances last season alongside his captain and teammate Neymar, who helped stave off relegation in the Brazilian second division. He's made 12 appearances for Brazil's under-17 and made 5 appearances during the under-17 World Cup in November 2023, helping the team reach the quarterfinals. I think it's no knowledge now. Tottenham are looking to strengthen their fullback ranks. They are without Destiny Udogie, who's been sidelined since December. Russ, it feels like, again, we're cribbling maybe over a couple of quid, but at the same time, he's got a very big release clause in there. Do we need to move on fast if this guy isn't going to be let go by the club? What do you think very quickly on this?
I agree with Luke. Need a controlling midfielder. We need a striker. We need a left winger. And we need them to be oven ready, not youngsters, irrespective of the money and the potential involved. Oven ready to do a job. That's what they should be doing this transfer window. Difficult, though.
Yeah. Marlon, to come on to that player very quickly. Again, a young player, under 21's level. Does that fill you with confidence so far that that's the first player that we're hearing out the public, media will that we're looking to buy?
Of course not. But is it the right position? Yes. It's clearly one we need to strengthen in. However, another 18-year-old who's got to get used to the physicality of the league and everything like that, when we need something now, that's the problem. So, no. He might go on to be the next Roberto Carlos in 5-6 years. But Tottenham don't need youngsters right now. We need players to come in now and rescue this club.
Okay. Luke, very quickly on that for you. Would you make of that link to that bid?
I think it goes back to Spurs fans not having confidence in their recruitment, because if we would have got our recruitment right, then signing a 19-year-old from Brazil, everyone would be going, hang on a minute, he's going to be Roberto Carlos, but we just don't have faith in it at this moment in time. But I think Marlon's right. I think we need to worry about players that come in and improve this 11 immediately. If he's not one of them, then we should be looking at getting players that do.
Okay, question to you all to close. Russ, very quickly, how confident are you we're going to come out the window with at least 2 or 3 players that are going to give Thomas Frank the best chance of what looks like success this is? And I can't even tell you what success looks like at the moment. How confident are you, Russ, quickly?
Hand on heart, I think we might get 1. And I think we'll get a couple of close misses. We tried, but we go again in the summer. That's what I think.
Around we go.
Yeah. Maybe it's a mindset. I just feel that is probably the way it's going to go.
Russ, you're a superstar. We love having you on here. We'll see you back for what is
Happy
a big
New Year,
game.
everyone, by the way. Forgot to say that, didn't we?
I know. Do you know why? It just feels like we've got a continuation.
It wasn't happy, is it? Might be miserable.
You've been a star. I was going to see you very, very soon for the FA Cup game.
Thanks, mate.
Marlon,
Pleasure.
quickly for you. What do you reckon? Are you confident we're going to see something this window?
Yeah. I'm gonna go against the grain. Like I said the last show, I'm trusting. This is the first time I'm putting my trust back in the club for this 1 month because once it gets closer to the end of the month and they haven't brought anybody in, that's when I'm back on that train and going, nothing's going to change. I don't care about the summer. I want you gone now. You're just as bad as it was you and the other guy that was causing the problems. Be gone. But for now, why my dependable Ben has outlasted the man I wanted gone. I'm trusting this board to get it right in this window. And I want it to all come at me when it all goes wrong. I want it and tell me I'm wrong.
Luke, close us. What do you think for you? Any confidence we'll do something this window that's going to give the fans hope for the second half of the season?
They've got to. They absolutely have to. You can't come out with a statement at the start of the season saying we want to go and win Champions Leagues and then do nothing in January like we did last year. First outfield player was signed in February 2nd. So absolutely that can't happen this year. I think we'll get one that will come in and improve the 11 immediately. And then we'll get another one that will be maybe a loan, maybe a mediocre sort of squad sort of player. And then it will be like, yeah, similar to what Russ said. Yeah, in the summer, we're going big. And then the summer will come around and it will be the same thing said again and again. But I feel like we'll get one. I think Johnson going out the door is definitely a sign to me to say that they're looking to get someone else in.
I've always said for me that January is always a tricky window, but I feel given where we are right now, the form of the team, the feeling around the manager, I feel like Ian going to have to do something massive to give fans optimism and confidence that this is worthwhile sticking with. Am I confident? No, but then that's what Spurs have done to me over many, many years and grinded us all down. So let's see. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful broadcaster, Russ Williams. Russ, thank you. Marlon, thank you. Luke, thank you, as always, for your amazing opinions and for, again, being grounded on this show, as difficult as it has been. And thanks, as always, to the 8,500 that watch the show live. We see every comment on the playback as well. So again, guys, thank you so much for all your support. We are going to wish you, as Russell said, a very healthy, happy new year. Let's hope it's a good, prosperous year for Tottenham, where we at least have a feeling that we're slowly getting our club back. From us all, keep safe, keep well. And as always,